Thank you all for coming. It's Friday night, and you could be with friends and family and having more drinks and food. But I appreciate you coming down. I'll hand over to Claudia now, actually, to fund the session.
Okay. So thank you for coming. Thank you, everyone. My name is Claudia Zeisberger. I'm a professor for private equity and venture capital at INSEAD. And I am, in the interest of full disclosure, I'm also part of the brain trust at RBC Ventures. So I was invited by Harald to host this amazing panel. Thank you so much for coming and joining us. So shall we just basically go around? You guys just 2 sentences on who you are. We have all the names and everyone behind it. I think you know what you want to say, so I'll leave it up to you. So, you want to start?
Okay, so I'll start. I'm Harald. Welcome everyone. Thanks for coming tonight on a Friday evening. I head the venture building activity at RBC Ventures. We are celebrating our 4th year of existence with a lot of ups and downs, and hopefully you don't have to go through all the downs that we've been through, and sharing with you some of this journey with other corporates.
Hi everyone, again also thank you for making the time to come down. I'm Edwin from Mandai. I've been here with Mandai about 2 years now, so if you think about Singapore Zoo and the River Safari, River Wonders, and Night Safari, that's all the entities that we do take, and we think about how do we bring Mandai to the rest of the world. Been on this venture journey from productization to venture building over the last 18 months here with the team, and prior to that I also led the consumer venture side at Royal Bank of Canada.
And lastly, Edwin from ENGIE Factory. ENGIE itself is a French-based energy company. We've been building ventures since about 2019. We've got 12 in a portfolio now. From our perspective, we want our ventures to make an impact, so we set them all a goal of abating 100 megatons of carbon over 7 years, so pretty lofty challenges.
So maybe before we jump in, can I just ask the audience by show of hand, who has done venture building before? About less than half. Okay, so bottom line, what we're going to talk about is one way for large corporates to get closer to the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So venture building is one way that large corporates can get closer, get access to innovation, engage with young companies, startups, and hopefully get something out of it. And so we can talk about that. Later on. Now, very quickly, just around, so we get a bit of a sense. The audience gets a little bit of a sense. What does a day in the life of look like, right? So let's start off with that. So what does venture building mean to your organization? That we get a little bit of a definition going, hopefully. So do you guys want to quickly go around? We'll start with Edwin.
So for us it means essentially trying to build future business lines of ENGIE, but we de-risk it. So we build startups which are independent. They're founder-owned, so 67% founder-owned. ENGIE takes a small 30% equity in this one. The idea is that these ventures go out, they grow. The risk is kind of shared between us, the founders, and other VCs. But in the long run, what we want is for these ventures to be so important to ENGIE that we buy them out before they get too big to be bought, and then they become back into the business. So it's a form of de-risking while looking to the future.
We're a bit earlier in our journey, so we think of it as a digital business or asset-light type of business focused on new innovation around wildlife and conservation and sustainability.
Well, for us, we started off as corporate innovation for the bank, and we realized that if we wanted to have an impact, we needed to build ventures outside of the bank as well, so that there are certain things we can do quicker, we can do it in a more agile way, we can build in a more efficient way certain things that the bank couldn't do. So we decided to add to the corporate innovation also a venture building arm. And on top of that, we also have a venture investment fund which focuses on investing in external fintechs. So it's really the combination of these 3 activities that we do at RBC Ventures.
So maybe on that note, having mentioned an external investment fund, it's another way a company can actually engage with startups. Why did you choose venture building? Why was that the path to go? We'll start with Edwin again.
I think first when we looked at sort of doing a corporate VC, you're a bit later in the life of the startup. So your ability to influence, ability to bring to strategy, to really combine it with your core day-to-day work is a little bit harder. When we thought about it, we wanted to have, because we work in a fairly niche market within energy, and there's a lot of benefits from being a corporate startup where you get knowledge, you get access in a space which has relatively high barriers of entry. If we can get in at an early stage, we can really give these ventures an unfair advantage, for want of a better word, that other startups couldn't have. So that's how kind of we went down that route.
Okay.
Similar vein, I think it's thinking about the right to win and the unfair advantages that you can offer as corporate. There's lots of different assets that Mandai itself is going through a large transformation, and then if we think about just not only the physical assets but the expertise behind it, again, finding new ways to approach it through venture and innovation, and being able to de-risk it as quickly as possible, I think were some of the avenues that led us down this path.
Okay.
I'll just add one aspect, which is being able, because we start early, we're able to choose the themes that we're interested in. We can choose, obviously, have an impact on the team, have an impact on who's on the cap table as well. So these are a lot more flexibility on building that venture from the ground up.
Rather than investing and see what emerges in the wider ecosystem. So I didn't mention that before, but yes, I will not hog the panel to myself. I will open for questions. So I just want to get a few more points of information out, and then I will open for questions. So you can get ready with your questions. So because if you don't ask me questions, I will ask you questions. So in true professor style, okay? So, and I have enough former students here in the room, they know that I deliver on my promise, okay? So now, from your organization's point of view, what are you trying to achieve? What's kind of like your, I don't want to call it mandate, but from what you know, what's the target? So maybe I'm going to start with Anthony.
Sure, it's really about reinventing the business and seeing how these things emerge. Obviously, there's changes, is growing fast, not just in technology and business, macro environments are happening. And I think it's being able to imagine what that new business would look like according to all the different customer needs that are happening. So it's really driving that. Obviously, there is a revenue goal and target as well to go along with that, but it's really keeping up our ability to adapt to change.
Yeah, for ENGIE.
So for us, I think ENGIE has a very strict, very fixed mandate, right? We're trying to move towards that net zero carbon world. So the way we think about it as, corporates, large companies are like cruise ships. They can only turn so fast. They can get to, change direction at a certain pace. We don't really have time to wait. We need to move faster. Startups, in our perspective, is one way of doing that. They're like speedboats, tugboats going off in a different direction. They can be more agile. They can get things done faster. So we're really here to help support the overall corporate agenda. And that leads us back to that 100 megatons of carbon abatement. By putting this on our ventures, it's very clearly aligned to what ENGIE wants to do, which is decarbonisation.
Yeah. And for
well, for us, we have a goal for the bank, but I would say we have a goal for the industry as well. When we started, our motto is to rewire the DNA in banking. And you and I were talking about this earlier, but back in 2008, 2009, there were a few impacts in the financial industry. And so we, as big financial institutions, I think we put a lot of focus on the risk, and maybe we lost focus on the customers and on society, what society actually really needs. So being able to listen to what customers actually want and need, and incorporating that in our customer centricity is what we try to do.
And try to build solutions then for what the customers need. Now, maybe you can share a few decisions that you had to make when you decided we're going to do venture building. Now, venture building is it's not a super new concept, but in the amount of venture building that's going on right now across industries, way more than what we have here represented on the panel, is quite stunning. I have to say, I usually don't get very often surprised, but I'm surprised. Since 2015, and there are different models that are being now experimented with. I think it's a fair comment to make. So can you share with us what kind of decisions you made that, you could have gone one way or the other? Maybe you can share what you tried and maybe it wasn't working, right? So I'm going to start with Harald this time. I haven't picked on you yet.
So maybe I'll just give a little bit of a scale. So we started off obviously not really knowing what we don't know. So we started off with one venture, and from that venture we decided to build upon it and start looking at how we can grow that venture. So now from one venture, which we started 4 years ago, we have a portfolio of 31 ventures that we launched, just to give an idea of scale. Out of these 31 ventures, 11 are commercially live and 20 are still in what we call incubation. So in the process of incubation, you will build, test, learn in an iterative fashion until we get it right. And that getting right is a little bit more processed, I would say, over time. Initially it was not that well engineered.
Okay. So you made sure you took lessons as you rolled out.
Yep.
So your company 1 had a different experience than your company 22.
That's right.
So
Hopefully.
we like to believe that. Okay. So
So I think similar vein, every time we finish a sprint, we always go back and check how can we do things better. But maybe more structurally, I think the one of the things you think of is sort of how much risk are you willing to take as a company? We still face the same thing, but ultimately, if a company is risk averse, and you're building a new startup, if you're building a new venture, if you want to commit $20 million into funding for 5 years, because how can you pull someone out of a job to run this if you give them a year's worth of funding, right? So one of the key things to think about is how much risk you want, your risk appetite, how much money you have. So when we looked at it from our company, slightly more risk averse, we're in an industry which is super traditional, right? It's energy, so things don't really happen there. The way we looked at it was, let's do a portfolio approach, a VC approach. So it means that we take X amount of money, we only invest a small amount of pre-seed, so we give them, say, maybe 12, 18 months worth of runway for like $400,000 or $500,000, but that's all we commit to spend. It means that the startups then have to go and find other funding from external sources, etc. But it also means that they survive if there's a market need for it. If no one's willing to fund them, there's no market need, so why? On the flip side, you obviously give up control. Right? So if you're thinking that you want to control everything, then you're going to have to pay the price for de-risking at some point in the future. But these are also levers and balances you've got to figure out as you go down the decision path. There's no one right answer. We've been working together trying to figure out how we co-invest, and we come from very different models and different paths, but there's a way, it works for your business, you just kind of have to figure it out.
I think one of the ways that we evolved as well was initially we were really looking at how to do things on our own, internally focused, and little by little we realized that in order to de-risk, if we bring along partners, it could be corporates, it could be partners in the ecosystem who are willing not only just to co-invest with us, but bring resources, potentially bring distribution into the proposition of the venture, then it brings a lot of value to the venture.
Yeah.
I'll speak more from the Royal Bank of Canada time, and I think it's similar to your journey. Starting with one and then figuring out what that operating model. I think making sure there was consensus around the senior management team and that alignment to give us that breadth and that runaway and some of that autonomy to be able to run and execute as we needed, and then trying to triage all the internal processes that you have to navigate. We were just talking about legal and risk. How many people here have to work through their legal and risk teams? And at the bank, we had 7 layers of risk to go through, and compliance and privacy and all that fun stuff. I think that, to me, it was really about creating the optionality, making sure there was no one right way to do it, and I don't think there is one right way to do it. We did look at similar, building our own, partnering with other groups, extending capabilities, and really was a lot of trial and error. I think, again, making sure you have the management buy-in is so important to make sure that they give you that space and they understand the time it takes, because it's very easy to go and look out in the market and say, hey, these companies just raised $100 million and they're growing their consumers at this pace and very easy to get caught. We're like, okay, yes, but how much money did they actually raise and invest to put into the machine first, right? And so you always, it's easy to draw comparisons, but you actually need to understand what it looks like to actually operate and get to that runway. So I think just on the risk appetite, knowing that runway that you have and making sure that's kind of aligned all the way up, very important.
So alignment is not it's a difficult one, and ultimately what you guys are all fighting, or what you're trying to align, is really the two culture problem. Right? I mean, so early stage companies are usually, early stage investing or growing early stage companies. Some of you may come from venture capital. We know statistically 8 out of 10 will fail. Okay, so that is usually for anyone coming from a corporate environment a bit of a shock, right? Because in corporate, and some of you will be in large corporations, failure is usually not a good thing, right? It's usually not a career promoting activity, right, to fail. So, but if you want to instead invest or be exposed to or grow early stage companies, you need a lot more patience than most large corporates will have. Can you how much time are you spending on what I call internal PR? So you work with your startups, I get that, yes, and we all want to hear more about that. But have you found ways to get to the decision makers so they are aware and educated and
Sure. At Mandai, I think some of the folks that are here from the team, they've done a great job because we're a little bit lucky. We get to talk about impact. The world is running out of time, and we need to make sure we can take care of the animals, the habitats, the people. And so, having that angle does help. I think we want to show the traction and the impact that we're driving by educating children all across the world, and everyone that comes here in Singapore, any of the tourists that come, and can we let them leave Mandai with some inspiration, right? And so we definitely use that card a little bit in our arsenal, but it's always making sure we have that regular update and that check-in with the senior leadership team, the board, to show some of that progress.
Yeah.
So we're quite lucky. We still have our own board, specifically for ENGIE Factory, which was set up, and we're lucky in the sense that they all believe in what we do. So we don't fight that battle on a constant basis. They are there as a check and balance for our investments to make sure we're in the right strategy. I think one thing we did was, in the first 3 years of life, we tried to fly under the radar. So rather than sort of going out and sort of telling the entire group, and this is, there's 20, 30,000, how many people in ENGIE? It's huge, right? Rather than sort of telling everyone, here's what we do, we just kind of focused on Singapore. And we got 1 or 2 business sponsors to work with us really closely, build the relationship over 3 years, got their support, and then as they came onto the board and his boss went to Europe and they started spreading word for us, that helped. So we kind of went startup mode, right? We started small, went undercover. As we had some success, then we used that to grow and to gain support.
Okay.
But in fairness, like Caroline and I probably spends all day and all night talking to senior leadership here and across the world just to get support for us.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's not easy.
Yeah.
So a few different ways. So like ENGIE Factory, SC Ventures is independent, was set up independently from the business. And I think from the get-go we made that decision because we didn't want to depend on the business in order to make these decisions, but also from a budget perspective, we have our own budget, right? We manage our own P&L, and for us that was really important. To your point, if we decide to make a decision and it's a good decision, great. If it's a bad decision, very often if it's linked to the business, you will continue it even if it's toxic or if it's bad for the business. So we make these kind of decisions. In terms of ambassadorship, our CEO, or global CEO, Bill Winters, whom you met, is a big sponsor of SC Ventures. So you need, I would say, the top level in order to sponsor the business and really to advocate for this. So that top management buy-in is really important. And I think then on the decisions, having an external perspective. So you mentioned the brain trust. So the brain trust is also a very important forum for us because we have internal people from different business units, but also external members like yourself who are able to advise us on the right decisions to make. So I think, you know, that internal external focus is really important for us as well.
Yeah. Can you maybe share like a few lessons over the years that you've learned? So if you, let's say, could go do it again, right? Is there something that you would for sure do or certainly never try again because it wasn't working? And is there anything that a couple of words of wisdom? Because I know I have questions from the audience. I saw the hands already up.
I'll have you go first. Trust your gut. I think if a business doesn't feel right, if you kick the tires enough, if founders don't feel right, don't be afraid to let them go sooner.
Like don't extend.
Yeah. Like the longer you keep something bad going, it becomes hard to let go.
Yeah.
So,
Which early stage investors are prone to.
yes.
Right?
So finding that balance between, is this a small blip, a small road bump in the journey, or is this, you know, a mountain? It's hard to make, but you get that through a bit of experience. So,
Similar, I think, establish those kill criteria, even in talent, because toxic culture can breed really, really quickly,
Yeah.
and you'll find if you take the portfolio approach, you'll have 10 different subcultures within that, and so you really need to make sure you keep an eye on that pulse. I would say making sure you have that governance framework, and that it's clear that everyone understands what they need to do at what stage, making sure they have that routine in place, because corporate still likes the routine, and you need to find ways of how you align to those processes as well,
Sure.
and understand it, while maintaining some level of independence and autonomy.
Yeah, and clarity is preferred. Harald?
Yeah, and for us, being able to innovate outside of our usual areas of business is something that I wish we would have started earlier. So we build and invest according to 6 themes. Some themes are very close to the business. We just launched a digital bank in Singapore called Trust Bank. So very close to the business, but we go as far as building sustainable ventures with ENGIE Factor. And I think, having that flexibility of innovating outside of what the core themes of the business is something important.
Right. Can you maybe, before I open for questions, give us a sense on your mandate right now, if there is such a thing? Do you have verticals you alluded to that you're investing in? Maybe you're just excited about them. Is there anything that you are specifically focused on? And we'll start with.
So we take a segment lens approach. So definitely families with kids, core audience. We look at donors. And we look at animal lovers in general. So it doesn't have to just be wildlife lovers, that pets and dog cat lovers that count too, but we think there's a lot of opportunity in those 3 spaces and themes. And then we'll dive down into the portfolio version once we've identified that segment.
That sounds like a fun.
ours is energy related, so anything to do with the energy transition, whether it's helping people adopt more renewable energy or helping with energy efficiency. As long as there's a lens and there's a focus, some way to impact that, it doesn't really matter which industry, which customer segment we're looking at.
And so for us, we have an investment mandate, so it has to be fintechs, obviously, so fintech at large. From an investment perspective, we invest at a Series B stage. From a venture building perspective, we will build according to 6 themes, and these 6 themes go from digital bank, developing online economy, developing SME and world trade, digital assets, developing capabilities that the bank has outside of the bank, and as I mentioned, sustainability and inclusion. So as long as it's within these 6 themes, we'll be open to listening to that.
Or at least to listen. Right. Okay. Open to questions. First question was in the back. Did we address it already?
Kind of, but I've got another one.
Okay, go for it.
I think it would be good to have a cross-section of this. So it's about discipline, right? And discipline comes a lot from people and culture. And discipline usually manifests in systems that you build. As we're moving forward with the venture building story, there are a lot of little pieces of software that are popping up to help you manage things like processes around problem statements and all of that. What does discipline look like in your organizations, and are you starting to embrace some of these tools, or is it more of a build versus buy?
Maybe I can start. I think early on, you start with what you have first. So, you evaluate what you need first before you go and invest time into the tool. But I think it's, core things. So how do you go and ideate? How do you collect all your hypotheses? How do you start to validate? If you need a collection sources, then use what you have, because you have Google Drive, you have Microsoft Office, you have all these other tools. I think it's probably more now with the virtual teams, collaboration. I think collaboration tools and stuff like that is very interesting. I would find a gap actually more in our research and outreach programs to be able to engage users and get feedback and those things. So I think that's probably where I would invest time or more resource in to make sure we have that running machine, because as we build, we always want that validation, and it's very tough to get people into a room. It's very tough to get people to give you 5 seconds to get some feedback. So I think any way or opportunities to be able to do that is really important. That's where I would spend some time in.
Yeah, I would say just from a discipline perspective, it's having clear evaluation criteria along the way. You mentioned build versus buy. I think we always ask ourselves this question: when is the right moment to build and invest versus buying a solution that's off the shelf? Ultimately, because we're building a venture, we're also building IP. So that notion of developing intellectual property that will be valued, quantified by others is also important when you build a venture.
I guess I see it sort of a growth story, right? So when we did it, we spent the first few years looking very much at how can we have a process that's replicable, like a factory, literally a process we can lift and shift to other countries and just go through get the same outcomes. So very clear on the goals, objectives, how we get there. But now as we are maturing and it's like we're getting more visibility across our company, there are questions like, should you buy from outside? When should you buy from outside? How do we work with later stage startups? It's a lot of things to think about. The dynamics, the ability to impact and work with them is very different. So I think the key here is to take it one step at a time. Focus on what you want to do first. That's the main thing. As you gain, I say expertise, but if you gain some sort of little confidence, not even mastery, just confidence, right? Then you can start experimenting. You experiment. It's a lab, right? We're basically labs. We're just trying things. There's no real one way to do this. We're all experimenting, but learning from the experience to go to the next thing is what we need to do.
Okay. Yes, please.
I want to talk about or ask about talent. The war has been on for many years. Last 2.5 years have been difficult for Singapore. A lot of tier 1 talent has left the country. Has this changed the way you have to operate, and if so, do you see new opportunities, of course also new challenges with remote teams? What are you doing in this space?
That's a great question. So talent, I would say talent is if you talk to VCs, most early stage VCs will not even listen to anyone that they haven't met before or that they haven't invested in before. So in our case, the initial talent comes from probably someone inside the bank that has a very strong expertise in the domain that they want to build their venture. Unfortunately, that falls short when you create a venture, because you will need a tech partner. You will probably need someone who's done it before. And I would say that's the combination of these talents is what is going to make or break a venture. So we haven't solved it for every single one of our venture. I think COVID has brought a lot of lessons as well, that maybe it's not something where we actually need everyone to be in the same location to build a venture. But it's still, for us, one of the key criteria when we build a venture.
Bring everyone together.
At some point, you need to bring everyone together. I think so. But it's not something where we have solved completely for. I would say very transparently.
How about you?
We've been lucky in some sense that with COVID and the focus on decarbonization, climate change, we've been riding that wave of people who are willing to give up their corporate day jobs doing other things, who want to come work with us. When we first started off, when we were trying to get founders, it was hard, right? We basically had no one applying. So we had to go find. Now we apply, we get people who've exited 2-3 times before. They've made their millions or billions or whatever it is. And they're happy to not take salary for like 2-3 years because they're like, I'm doing this for impact. You know, I want to invest in my team, the money goes to them, I don't need it. But we've spent 2, 3, 4 years, we got lucky, timing's another thing, but we spent time building the brand. We're in a space that people want to work in, are willing to go, it's not about the money, it's about the change I'm making. And so maybe off the back of that, it's just having something people believe in, right?
And they're all here in Singapore?
So we've got 6 ventures in Singapore, and all the founders are here, and then we're starting 3 in Australia, and they're all based in Australia. So for us, it's very important that the founders are in the first market they opened. And just the way we work means that we have 6 Europeans or 3 in Australia.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah, I think also similarly, we're in a space where people want to make a difference and have an impact, but it's challenging. It's really hard. I think first things first, you just got to have passion for what you do, and you need to love that piece, and then you can bring this around the experts around it. I don't think we've solved that yet. We do work with lots of different partners to try to augment the team, and I think we've been working with some of the institutes of higher education to find new talent and see about that. So I think that's something that we'll probably look at even more deeply, to identify our earlier talent to start to groom and onboard.
And also, like, someone could be very good for the beginning of the venture. So someone who has the skill set for 0 to 1 could be very different from the skill sets you're looking for, 10 to 100. So we typically have the right skill set for 0 to 1, and then finding the right CEOs is something that
Complicated.
is a little bit more complicated.
Please.
You said earlier in the CVC space, 2 out of 10 will make it.
In the VC space. VC,
okay.
early stage investing. So I don't discriminate where the money is coming from.
Okay, so 2 in 10. What you learned so far in the corporate venture space? If you talk about a portfolio approach like Edwin, what is the hit rate to make it successful?
There is no data in my academic hat on corporates.
Okay.
Why? Because they won't share it. I'd be happy to measure it for you. You get me the corporates, I would love to get that data.
So let's work on the assumption of 2 in 10.
Yeah.
That means
So, which basically goes back to, you mentioned that early on, the corporates come to this with the idea of bringing extra value, their superpower to the game. So we're going to be building something that clearly we need it, we can't see it outside, so we're building it. If we need it, others will need it too. And if we do a good job in building it, and maybe funding the initial round on it, others will jump on top of it.
Right.
So it's that idea of the superpower. Will this play out? No, but I have a statistic on corporates, corporate venturing, and they all know that. So at INSEAD we did a study in 2015 and we looked back. So those are all reasonably established corporate venture capital vehicles, right? And it was corporate venture capital. We didn't discriminate what they do with the money and how they build or invest or whatever. And 80% of corporate venture capital vehicles closed down within less than 5 years. Now that is not a good data point, right? And it probably is related to, that's why I was pushing on that point early on, that the champion, whoever that was in the organization, left. And when you look at strategy, the average tenure of CEOs in the US and Europe is 4.8 years. So the CEO changes, he or she is not excited about venturing in the widest sense, we start from scratch. Naturally, venturing is, and venturing is non-core by definition, right? So, and that's why it's being shut down. So,
follow-on question.
No, I'm going to take one question each time. So, sorry, I'm very
but
strict
it's
there.
actually the pre-question to my real question.
It's the question. It's a better question?
Yes.
Okay, make it better.
So, Edwin said portfolio approach, right? So, you need a lot of capital, right? Let's say I need to build at least 5 venture because I want to de-risk, and I know 50% might not make it. So, where do I get the capital from in the company if I don't have the investment mandate? Is there a way I can open up to external? Can I bring private equity?
You can do anything you want as long as that's your mandate, right? So for a corporate venture builder, usually the money comes off the balance sheet of the corporate. And as it stands right now, the corporates have tons of money on the balance sheet. Money is not your problem, trust me, in corporate venturing. It's not your problem. It is no one's problem, by the way, in early stage investing. You want to be an entrepreneur? You have record dry powder on venture capital, so here's a pitch for venture capital, and maybe some people will come to you. So now is the time. Yes, venture capital has stopped investing a little bit. They cannot sit in the dry powder forever, right? They need to deploy. Yes, it will be a good time to start a business going forward, not just as a profit INSEAD. There you go. You can send me carry when you get good founders, okay, or whatever you're being paid at, right? Yes, please.
Yeah, corporate has been, starting new subsidiary and getting into new line of business all the time, right? It's not new. For example, Singtel is going to digital banking, and from my previous hotel group, we started like spa training school, going to spa product and things like that. So what's the difference between that and venture building?
Really good question. So absolutely. So you should be doing innovation anyway, right? So whether you're running a blue ocean strategy, whatever you're doing, right, you should be doing innovation. So how are you different from innovation?
I heard it this morning actually in one of our discussions, and I would say you could probably take a more traditional approach if you already have a clear view of what the end goal is, and then you can adopt the practices. We go into ventures because we don't know. We're trying to de-risk. Our job actually is what the risk job people are trying to help us enable. We're trying to reduce the burn and mitigate the risk so that we can get to that profitability and we can get to that customer growth. So I think it's we get misinterpreted a little bit, and so I think that's the approach. When it's not clear and you really need to test and validate and get there really fast and get those signals, build confidence. That's probably when you would take a venture approach.
Yeah, I'd agree.
So you good with that?
I would just say do it in a more systematic way, and also do it before it becomes too late. So the whole point of doing ventures is do it early so that you can anticipate these changes that will be coming in the industry.
So what a lot of corporates are saying we have our venture builder is our sandbox. So if you remember your kids in the sandbox are great, right? You can build something, you can knock it down and start again, right? No costs involved. So it's kind of like a safe environment or a finite amount involved. That's one thing. Let me also add, when you look at the data, per revenue dollar investing in R&D has been in a continuous decline since the 80s. So keep that in mind, right? So, and there are some other reasons for that too. A lot of corporates are complaining that they do not get the R&D talent anymore. Why not? If you're a traditional business, good luck trying to hire the top, whatever it is, engineer, the top R&D guy, the top DevOps guy. They're not going to come to you. They're going to go to all the big tech companies. So that's part of I think that's part of the reason. It's very difficult to define cause and effect, why we're having such a rise of corporate venturing. So, because you're trying to do R&D is not delivering, you can't get R&D talent, what are you going to do? So
I would say also in our case, we have been, so when we say rewire the DNA in banking, it's both our goal, but it's also our context. We've been extremely challenged by newcomers in the industry. I'm not going to name names, but certain players who are less than 10 years of existence and have a market value that is greater than ours for a bank that's 160 years old. So obviously, that brings certain things in perspective.
I mean, it's not just banking, right? Let's go down, consumer list, right? All the consumer guys, Nestle, Unilever, petrified. What's going on? Why? Because Diageo, young generation, doesn't drink anymore, want alcohol free. Wow, it's your core business, what are you going to do about it? So world is changing. So in getting that kind of census out there to know what's going on, it's really complicated. So rather than building, so the consumer guys, I've had one guy once say to me, we are better at watching, observing, and then buying. When we're building, it just doesn't work. We don't get the same results. So, which is quasi, I guess, R&D. Any question? Left side has been very quiet. Yes,
Maybe,
please.
since you talk a lot of talent, right? I asked Edwin this question as well as now. How do you attract co-founders, and what kind of equity would you give them? How do you determine how much equity, right, can be raised from 70?
I was waiting for
So
the
the-
equity question.
and it gets trickier when you try to combine a certain, corporate
Yeah.
perspective with another one. But
We're getting there.
yeah,
So how do you find co-founders?
So our model is that we invest at pre-seed, and so we kind of assume this is your company from scratch. So we assume from the starting point that you're willing to drop your salary to one that is a founder, right? If you're going to start with your own, it's your own startup, how much money are you going to take out of it on a monthly basis? Probably just about enough to survive, right? You're not going there for 10, 20, 30K. You literally just want enough because you should be investing your own money into the company, right? But obviously in return you want the long-term benefits, which means equity. So the way we do it is we give you pre-seed, first round funding, roughly it's about 400K, roughly lasts you 12 to 18 months for our ventures, but you as founding team get 60% equity. You also take a founder's salary, so we benchmark against Entrepreneur First and Antler, so roughly around the salaries they give. But it means in the long run, the equity is yours, and how you choose to use it in the future is up to you. And it ties in the value of the company with your own future. And so so that's how we looked at it. It's a slightly different model to how you guys
well,
run.
we have I would say a similar model, but different numbers. You need to offer a package where there is a little bit of risk taking. So even though people would be coming from a corporate background, there's an incentive to take a risk, and that incentive is in the form of equity. We provide some equity with the guarantee of a salary and to the founders as well.
We're still discussing equity, but on finding founders, I think it's actually, I still like referrals. I like talking to people. I like talking to the community. I like understanding what people have done, what's out there, who's out there. I think even when we started at RBC Ventures, our team was all through referral. And I use this note, friends don't let friends down usually, or your network is not going to let you down earlier on. But I think the more people that you meet, and founders are come in all different sizes and shapes as well. And they're at different life stages, life opportunities, and so they might want a different type of package. So I think it really depends on that. I've seen some tech companies offer that optionality. You can have the corporate package, or you can have the upside as well.
The entrepreneur package.
Yeah. So I think it really depends, and it might change depending at what stage you're in.
Yeah.
So one size doesn't really fit all. I think you really need to take a look at it, what works.
Yes, please.
This is how do you define the success of corporate venture capital? Put aside those financial returns from this.
Yeah. What do you want? Why are you doing what you're doing?
We define it in stages. Ventures have, every time they survive more than 6 months, you're kind of celebrating, to be honest. Every time they raise funding, you're celebrating because, in our perspective, because they're raising from external, it means that someone else out there believes in the business they do, that this company's running, and they believe that this is a viable place to be. So every time one of our ventures raises funds from outside, whether it's actually from another part of the ENGIE business, from a VC, from a partner, that's success for us. Ultimate success is that one of our ventures really either gets bought out by ENGIE, so it's 100% owned, or it IPOs. But for us, that's something that's so far down the line, we can't even think about that now. We're just like, hey, let's get our ventures fundraising for the next round and the next round. That's where we're at.
Okay. Yeah, we're still early on in that stage, but I can say at RBC it was getting to that decision: are you going to spin in or spin out? I think every venture when they first start out, just trying to show progress, build confidence, show the right signals that you're engaging with the target audience that you're engaging with, and demonstrating that you're doing all that you can to get to that validation and validate all your hypotheses. From that corporate side of venturing, it was really homegrown internally anyways. So you had that corporate mindset that it would probably spin in. They always left it on the table. If you got to a big enough size, you would have that discussion to spin out. They probably in the same vein, 2020, 20 plus ventures already. Some further along than others.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately it's how much value you're creating for the mothership, but also getting that external validation on the venture. And if you don't get that validation, then it's just a corporate exercise, to be honest. So you do need that value perception and that value validation from externality.
I think that external validation is actually pretty critical. As soon as you get an external to say, hey, I really want to invest or I really want to partner with you, that's a great signal for the validation.
So it doesn't need to be necessarily P&L related, as long as you get this external validation.
So I had a German CEO from a large German corporate once say to me, what do you want out of it? He said, what I want to get, I don't care so much about P&L, I care about intelligence. I want them to bring back what I don't know yet, right, on the intelligence side. Okay, do you want to continue, or I don't know what your timeline is? So do you have any other question? One more question,
yeah.
Go for it.
How do you balance the control that you give the founders that you get them on board? Right, and is there like a threshold? Do they get a certain amount of voting rights over a certain time frame? Like, how would that work for corporate venturing?
Again, so we make sure ours are founder owned. We bring good people, and we trust our founders. So we want to make sure that they own the business, they make operational decisions. Obviously, there are certain matters, we sit on the board of directors, so certain matters that we will have a say in, depending on the importance of it. We have more of a say than others. But the idea is that the way we run it is it's your venture. We just give you the first round of funding. You have to make this work, and so they get a lot of day to day. They get all the say.
I think you want to make sure definitely that you're aligned in your objectives and goals, and that alignment I think is critical. But you do want to pass that sense of ownership, whether that is through equity or or decision making, some type of level of autonomy to enable the founder or the co-leads to be able to go ahead and do that. But in corporate venturing, you definitely need to make sure you have that alignment. Otherwise, it's a natural disaster.
Yeah, and you want to give them autonomy in the decision and the operations, but obviously you want to be able to also call the shots when things don't go according to plan. So we've set up at SC Ventures, but across all our ventures that are mature enough, OKRs, and we track these OKRs actually on a weekly basis, just to make sure that are they on track, and if they're not on track, what should we do about it? And then it's a decision that as investors, as vested investors, we also need to be able to make.
We try to put some of the funding, so we don't give all the funding straight away, we tranche it. So we tranche those to milestones in the first 6, 9, 12 months that are achievable, we hope, or we think should be achievable, so they don't get the full money and just blow it. So we try to tranche it that way. That's another form of control, like soft control.
Okay. Anyone wants to follow on the question? So, okay, I think I'm standing between them and drinks, so which is not a good position. So I'll hand back to you.
Well, yeah, just again, thanks everyone for coming. This is our second event. We're going to do this more often. We'll do it probably on a monthly basis at ENGIE next time. Or
I think quarterly.
There you go. And if you want to continue the conversation, we have obviously a networking session. And just don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much.
If you'd like to be more involved with the support, in one form, contributing in articles, in helping organize this in your event space, please reach out. I think there's a link on the site.
Yeah, we'll send out a follow-up as well, so you guys can provide some honest feedback. Do leave your name if you're interested. You don't have to. We'll keep it anonymous.
All right. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for a good conversation.